morning, Bellows Falls, and welcome to the feed. It's February 21st, 1 month until the spring equinox.
And 70 degrees is
And
predicted
70 degrees. Justin wore his Hawaiian shirt
I know.
in honor of our preview to spring.
I couldn't help myself.
I know. I wasn't even thinking I should have worn my sunglasses and
I know.
had a little fizzy drink
here
with an
I'm in my
umbrella
black
in it.
Anyway,
Anyway,
here we are.
here we are.
Good spaghetti dinner on Saturday.
Excellent spaghetti dinner hosted by the Rotary at the Moose. We had a wonderful turnout from the community, and we want to thank everybody and all the Rotarians. It was excellent.
Yeah, it's good times.
Spaghetti, good meatballs, good victuals.
Yep. What's happening in the
It's actually kind of a
future.
quiet week. Mostly, we have. Mike's like, it's not a quiet week because I have an event coming up. So yes, this Thursday night at the Opera House is the Opioid Addiction Forum, The Importance of Hope. We're going to have a little clip at the end.
Yep.
That'll give you some more information about that. But we really, really would like to see the Opera House filled. It's 6 o'clock, 6 to 8.
So we can take up to 500 people. So the first 500 people are getting in.
So please
get
get there
there early.
early.
5:30 the doors open and it starts at 6. And it's going to be really. We did a walkthrough yesterday, and it's actually we have a 2-hour program, and I'm hoping we can fit all the stuff in 2 hours because it's going to be. Really moving.
You're
We have
packing a lot of information. You're coming at it from a lot of different angles. So I
Yes,
think
so.
you're not going to. I don't think you're going to sit there and be bored, people. I think you're going to
I
sit
don't
there
think so. I
and
think
be-
people aren't going to be looking at their watches. They're going to be because there's going to be a lot of people presenting a lot of different information, and I think it's going to be pretty good. So, anyway, what else is going on?
Well, this is coming up. I just want to remind everybody: get your tickets. They're on sale now for Jesus Christ Superstar. This more than likely will sell out. Some
Yeah.
of the performances will sell out. So if you're hoping to go on a Friday or Saturday night, either March 29th, 30th, 31st, April 5th, 6th, or 7th, get your tickets now. Don't
Yeah,
wait
it's
till
gonna
the
be
last
spring,
minute.
Yeah, the springtime event for Main Street Arts at the Opera House is getting to be.
You saw some of the
It's-
pre-production
yeah,
of the stage
Exactly,
staging
they're
last
building
night.
the sets, and they're really. I mean, they did elaborate sets for Sweeney Todd, but this one doesn't look like it's going to move, but it's really covers the whole space.
And this one
yeah.
also, the production, I mean, I think was there like 50 people in the
Yeah, I think
chorus
so.
or something? There's an amazing amount of people on stage in the production, so I think it's going to be a great production. I know last year, I remember Sweeney Todd, the last weekend of Sweeney Todd, people were like, oh, I'm thinking of going, but I haven't bought tickets yet.
Yeah,
It was
they
sold
didn't get
out.
to go.
So they didn't, yeah, exactly. So get your tickets now, and then you know you have your tickets.
Yep,
So.
go early and go often. That's what David told me to say. He said, "Go tell everybody, go early and
Early,
go often."
Go the first weekend, then make sure you book the second week too.
That's right, because then you'll get all the parts you might have missed on the first one.
Perfect.
All right. Well, we have Justin with us today.
And we are talking about that little 3-letter word that everybody hates.
Yes, fats. I think, as a follow-up from the last
Yes, when we
episode,
talked about sugars last
where we
time.
talked about sugar and junk food and stuff, it seemed like fat was the next logical thing to talk about because there's a lot of misinformation
There's a ton of misinformation
about fat, and also just a lot of fear about eating fat of any sort. And
It's been beaten over our heads for the last 30 years that fats are bad.
Oh, at least that
least
long,
30 years.
and it's, when working with clients, it can be a real struggle to just. I always start slowly, eat that half an avocado a day, or try adding a little bit of butter on your toast or whatever, because it's so instilled,
it's
and a lot of people it was drilled in by their parents, and so they're, they've lived their whole life eating very little fat and being afraid of it, or
Right. and then wondering why if they were overweight.
Well, yeah,
if they were overweight, they were like, "Whoa, I'm not even eating any fat."
well, exactly. Ironically, eating less fat, you're going to end up more than likely replacing that with carbohydrates that could make you fat. And also, it's interesting. Without enough fat, the body, we need fat for our cell membrane. Every cell membrane of our body has fat in it. It's called the phospholipid bilayer, and so for our cells to function properly, they need fats, and we're only getting the kinds of fats that we eat. So, if we don't eat the right kinds of fats or enough fats, then our cells can be deficient. In particular, our nervous systems are very high in fat, and that's where, like the fish oils, omega-3 fatty acids, that there's been a lot of, at least in the last few years, there's been a change, a recognition that there are some really good fats, and that's started to trickle down into the mainstream consciousness that we do need to get certain kinds of fats.
Right.
When you have fish oils in your diet, that's going to make each of those cells work a little bit better. And when you add that up amongst all the cells of the body, that could be a significant increase in health.
And that's a fairly simple supplement to take without any side effects.
Oh yeah, it's a fairly simple supplement to take. The only thing to worry about, I guess, is if you have certain rare clotting disorders, because it could make your blood a little bit thinner.
Or problem swallowing pills, because they are usually pretty good sized.
They are, and I would say the biggest thing is that you can end up like kind of burping them up. That's kind of a big, that's kind of one of
That's
those.
a drawback for some
Well,
people.
and that's one of the things that can keep people away from it. But on the other hand, you can also get those fats from foods, and our best source, I would say, of omega-3s would be like wild caught salmon. We can get that fairly accessibly here, even right across the river at Shaw's.
Can you speak to that a little bit? Because it's confusing, I think, to some people when they go to the fish counter and they see, the price for wild caught salmon, and then they see the farm raised salmon. Because the farm raised salmon, is that not as good a source?
It's much less good of a source. I'm not completely sure of like that Faroe Island farm salmon from like Norway or whatever, but in general, the farmed fish is fed kind of like almost like a dog food
Right.
type
Yeah,
of,
pellets,
that's what.
right?
Yeah.
which is partially made up of other fish caught in the ocean and then partially grains. So you get more omega-6s because basically the salmon doesn't create the omega-3s. They're getting it from the algae that are eaten by other smaller fish that then they eat. So if they're eating basically corn, then they're going to have a similar fatty acid profile to corn-fed beef, for instance.
Which is that's fascinating. Fish really aren't meant to eat corn, are they?
No, not particularly. And there's,
I was just like, this.
Come
I
on
didn't.
now.
I didn't realize. I guess I didn't realize.
You see
Yeah.
those salmon like,
A little ear of corn. That's not how it works.
no, they're carnivorous.
Do they eat across this way, or do they eat across?
So it makes them more prone to disease. They're kept in really dense pens.
yeah, they're in
pens.
like these nets. Aren't
Right,
they?
so
Huge
they're in the
nets.
ocean. They're not completely separate from the ocean. They're in these nets, and so this population density, they get diseases. So then they put antibiotics in there, and then all the waste from them is polluting into the ocean. Because it's concentrated, like all the pee and stuff.
Plus the waste food.
Plus
they
the
don't
waste
eat
food,
all that food.
and some of them escape. And like a lot of the Atlantic farm salmon are penned out in the Pacific. So then you've got Atlantic salmon that don't belong there escaping into the populations of
Wow.
the Pacific fish. But one of the interesting things is that all that farmed fish is fed pink dye to make it pink, because that's where the pink color comes from their food too. So if the farm salmon that you saw at the fish counter was gray and the wild salmon was red, you
Because
would.
the wild salmon is definitely a richer color,
Yeah.
than
Because
that's
of
even
the-
And
more
particularly the
interesting.
sockeye salmon is really rich
Right.
in that astaxanthin, which is an antioxidant in its own right. And some people can find it a little bit fishier than
The taste wise, yeah.
yeah. But now king salmon, when that's in season, which it's a little more expensive, but that's a little fattier and a little less. It's not as red. That's like probably the primo of salmons. But yeah, I think if they weren't using that artificial coloring, it would be a no-brainer to buy the pink one versus
Yeah.
the gray one.
I
but-
just thought it was a good point to bring up because I think it's I didn't know exactly. I knew that I'd read different things that, stay away from the farm-raised salmon. I didn't. Now I'm just like, that grosses me out totally.
Yeah. But it's sort of like free-range chicken versus.
Yeah, the pen chicken.
It is,
chicken.
but it's also like the price point on the fish. If it's going to be farm raised, you might as well choose a different protein that you can get less expensively. Like a free range chicken is going to be less expensive than farm raised salmon. More than likely. I mean, the kind of amount of money that you're paying for fish, it's not really that worth it if you're thinking that you're getting it for a specific health benefit.
Yeah.
Versus, if you got a farmer's chicken that was foraging in their fields, that's going to have some of those omega-3s too. Basically, any animals that are more eating what they're kind of designed to eat, like cows grazing on grass, that's where like grass-fed butter versus regular butter is going to have a better fatty acid profile, more of those omega-3s.
But what if you cut out the middleman? What if you cut out the salmon and you eat little fish?
Well, that's great. Eating little fish is great. I mean,
Well, I'm just
It's
kidding.
just funny. It made me laugh. Sorry.
no, that's very true. Things like
We don't I mean, it's not in our, and maybe it's cultural here, but like in Norway and stuff, they eat kippers and sardines.
Yeah,
and
sardines
all sorts of
are an
things.
excellent. I recommend sardines a lot to people
Really?
because, well, one, you can eat the bones as well, so they're a good source of calcium if you get the ones with the bones in, because they're pretty
Those
much
are the ones that come in the little tins.
yeah.
I say this out of because I was over.
They're an acquired- they're an acquired taste.
Yeah, they're acquired. But I was at Ocean State. I'm a little cheap. I was over at Ocean State.
Oh, I thought we were going to have
and they had a boatload of
an
these.
egg discussion again.
Yes.
Your
Well,
restaurant
we won't
egg.
go into the whole egg and where my comfort zone is. That's for a
Ocean
whole
State-
other show.
Ocean State is a good place.
in the egg, and I can go there. And it's all
Ocean
right.
State's a great place to get canned fish, actually, and I mean,
They have a boatload of canned
and
fish.
tuna
Pardon the pun.
isn't maybe as high in omega-3s as sardines, but tuna's not necessarily a bad choice. I mean, you got to watch mercury levels and stuff, but with things like sardines and anchovies that are small fish, they have less chance to
anchovies, too, yeah.
accumulate toxins as
Right,
well.
right.
And I mean, salmon for the most part are in a pretty clean fishery.
Come on, man!
No,
I'm telling you.
I hear you, Marty. On the, I mean, it's definitely one of those things. I remember my first sardine.
I don't know.
I remember anchovies. I actually cut
They're
out
just
anchovies.
really salty. I think I could
because
probably
they're
do
so really salty.
anchovies over any because
But-
they're salty. So do you just mostly get the salt taste, or?
I used to love the salt taste. That was it. But a family secret, I used to feed my daughter anchovies when she was small before she decided
really?
before she decided went
Oh,
to
really? You
school
just
and
got her-
figured out that you're not supposed to eat those sorts of things. But I call them little fishy. Hey, want a little fishy? And she go, yeah, a little fishy.
And if she's watching right now, she's going to kill
She's
you.
gonna kill me. But that's where we go sometimes.
That's what parents do.
That's what we do.
That's funny.
But yeah, all right. So I was actually doing good. I wasn't doing bad. I was getting her healthy fats.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so those are good choices if you tolerate them, and so as I said with the sardines, it's a good source of calcium as well, which is a nice little benefit, and it's not a supplement. If you want to stay away from like taking fish oil supplement kind of things. Now, as far as non-seafood sources of omega-3s, we've got grass-fed beef, which there's tons of options in Vermont, particularly. There's
We're
all
very,
kinds of.
very lucky around here. We really are.
Yeah, I mean, for local meats in general, it's pretty accessible. Especially like ground beef is reasonably priced.
I was just gonna say that, and it's not as cost prohibitive as it was at one point. I mean, I think I've seen, as more and more people do it, the price is going down because it's more available, and it's really not for the. I guess my point would be for the it's worth the extra money for the health benefit. If you don't want to have to take a lot of expensive pills and expensive medications potentially,
Well-
then invest your money in quality food.
Yeah.
Use your food as your medicine.
And as it's getting bigger, like you can now get, all the mainstream grocery chains are carrying grass-fed beef from Australia because almost all the beef in Australia is raised on grass, and they have a tropical climate, so their grass grows year-round. Whereas like U.S. beef,
You sort of.
the range dies back for a few months,
Right,
so it's actually cheaper to ship it halfway around the world and
Does
sell
it
to
lose?
us.
That would be my question with the Australian beef. Does it lose any of its in the shipping process? Does it lose?
Well, I'm not. I suspect that it's ground here. You know,
Okay.
that it's shipped in whole parts. The one thing that would accumulate potentially is like histamines and stuff. But I don't think, you know, as long as you didn't have a sensitivity to that, you would be all right. And lamb has been one of the grass-fed meats that has been in U.S. supermarkets forever. Like that's all. They've never really appreciably fed it on grain, so that's been an option that you could go into any supermarket.
That's an
and-
acquired taste a little
Yeah,
bit too,
that's-
though.
again,
I
that's
think that's
another
right
one
up there
of
with
those.
anchovies. I think personally.
well, because it definitely has that thing to it. Yeah.
It has a flavor,
Yeah, so the grass-fed beef that we can get either locally or the Australian stuff that are good options. And I mean, it's as low as like about $5 a pound for ground, I would say. So it's not super expensive. Other fats would be grass-fed butter, like Kerrygold is the.
I was going to say, again, not expensive, and you can find it local. You can find it at Shaw's.
You can find it at it's,
Yeah.
it's everywhere. It
Yeah.
tastes good. You can just by looking at
The
it,
color,
you can tell.
the color.
You know?
It's funny
like-
because like if you have Kerrygold and then you have even like regular sourced butter or God forbid a margarine, the Kerrygold is just such a richer. It's a richer color.
Right, you can
It's-
see it, and yeah, so you're getting some of those benefits. Now, it's not as concentrated in omega-3s as fish, but that's not necessarily a problem because you're going to eat more butter, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
more than likely than you are going to eat fish, you know.
Because putting fish on your toast doesn't work quite as well,
Unless it's the anchovy.
unless it's anchovy.
It's not quite as versatile.
It's not quite as versatile. Just saying. Just saying.
How about vegetable sources of fat? Or
Well, avocados are a nice one. Coconut oil has gotten a lot of press lately, like
Ton
in
of
part
press.
as in
And
bulletproof
it used to be
coffee.
like coconut oil, medium chain,
Yeah.
medium chain fatty acid, not good.
Right, and because it's saturated, and we've had this saturated fat is bad mantra. Because at first it was all fats, then they knocked it down to saturated fats because they wanted us to replace those with things like corn oil, which we now know is a very bad decision. But it's interesting with coconut oil; those medium chain triglycerides are actually burned preferentially by the body, and so. We had touched briefly on ketosis in one of the previous shows, and the medium chain triglycerides can kind of induce ketosis in anyone's metabolism because they're burned preferentially without having to get the body fully switched over to fat burning mode. So they can help to kickstart fat burning and or just be a good sustained source of energy. So it's actually, they're pretty beneficial.
And it's quite nice to cook vegetables with coconut oil because it gives them just a little
really? A
added
little flavor?
flavor. Yeah.
A little added flavor, and the saturated fats that have been so vilified actually stand up to heat the best. So your best choices for cooking fats are the more saturated ones, and the less saturated, the quote-unquote vegetable oils, they are really damaged by heating. And even olive oil that's more stable, mono-unsaturated, can be damaged by high heating too. It's best to not use it for serious heating,
Right.
which many of us do
Right,
because
right.
it's like a go-to, and it's
Well-
liquid at room temperature. It's easier to use,
Yeah,
but not necessarily as.
Well, I was just going to go. My new trick, and actually, John Marsden's coming on next week to talk about his cooking classes and stuff. I went to a cooking class with him, and he cooks with olive oil and butter because butter is more stable at a higher heat.
Yeah.
And then I've been doing that, and it's actually working great because the olive oil. Yeah, I was always never. Olive oil is easy and quick. You can pour it in, and then you add the butter to it, and it seems like it cooks things a little bit.
And then you
better.
get that good flavor of the
Yeah,
butter.
yeah. So that was a little trick that
Yeah.
I learned. So that's one way to kind of equalize that out with the stability. So I just use a little bit of olive oil and then add a little bit of butter, the two.
Nice,
And
yeah, no.
the grass-fed Kerrygold, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way to go. Other saturated cooking fats that we don't, think of as much anymore are things like lard, which actually lard is less saturated than butter. Because all these fats are mixtures of different fatty acids, and surprisingly, there's more monounsaturated fats in lard that we think of as like, oh, this is artery
Yeah,
clogging
yeah,
madness.
yeah.
And that's another thing that we can actually get pretty inexpensively because all these.
I was just going to say, where does one get lard?
Well, all these farms, they have to sell the whole animal, and most of us want certain cuts, like the loin chops out of the pig, for instance. So, like they'll sell, like Walpole Valley Farm has big chunks of leaf lard for like $2 a pound or something that. Because people don't, use it much, even for pie crust. It's like, oh, really? You use
It
lard?
used to be that was the thing.
That was the
and
big
French
thing.
in French, like
Well,
croissants
and-
was lard and butter. I mean,
Right, and that
was really-
saturatedness makes for really nice flaky pie crusts and
Yeah.
stuff. But
So
it's
what's
actually leaf lard.
Yeah, what does that mean?
It's the fat that's around the kidneys,
Oh,
and that's like the highest grade fat. Because then
Like
there's
the
also
purest.
like back fat and stuff. But it's I think a little bit harder. Tends to be harder.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff around the kidneys. So that's what would be preferred for like pie crust. Now when you get it in this big chunk, it still needs to get rendered down. It just basically means simmered in some water so that the fat separates from the tissue. Well, it doesn't even have to be water. You can also just like do it in a baking pan. But that actually is a pretty good, pretty versatile fat because it's pretty mild tasting and can work for a lot of different things. And also even just like, because of this no fat thing, we don't even think about like when you cook, let's say chicken thighs. You get some of that fat off. That traditionally, that's called
That would-
schmaltz, and that
Yes.
was like this
I
super.
remember there was a name. For
Yeah, and that was like cook your veggies in it and stuff, and it really is a very tasty
Interesting.
way to go. But usually we're just we're dumping all those fats because that's just what we're used to doing.
Right, we have to come back and do
We do have to
fats
get more
again.
fats again.
Because we're running
I
out
know,
of
and
time.
we haven't even gotten to the
We
good
haven't
fat,
even
bad
got to
fat.
the good fats, and then
Well, we
I was
did tell
talking to
some
Linda
more.
this morning, and she goes, "Well, I know there's good fats, but are there healthy fats?"
Mm-hmm.
And I had to think about that and say, "Okay, yeah, we got to maybe figure out how to distinguish."
Yeah,
But
we haven't
I
haven't
know.
covered nearly.
No,
we haven't.
nearly.
Next month we're going to have fats part
Part
2.
3.
Part 3. All right, that's great.
Well, yeah, I guess part 3 because the other one was sugar. Sugar led us to fat. Yeah. But we have a
But
clip.
we want to close with a clip. It's from Richard Carrier, who's going to be one of the speakers at tomorrow night's forum on opioid addiction, and I'll just let it roll. We'll see. We're going to show the clip, and goodbye, Bellows Falls.
We want to see
next
you all
week.
tomorrow night.
See you tomorrow night. Yeah, see you tomorrow night at the 5:30 at the Opera House.
My name's Richard Carrier. I grew up here in Bellows Falls, Westminster, Saxons River area. I grew up in a wonderful community where people took care of each other. We looked out for each other. Parents made sure that you were doing what you were supposed to be doing, and if you got in trouble, your parents knew before you got home. It was a community that spent a lot of time looking out for each other. The alumni parades, the old home days and everything was on a much larger scale than it is today. The reason I'm speaking to you today is that my family had experienced a terrible loss on November 16, 2017. We lost our daughter, my stepdaughter, to an overdose. She was left in the parking lot of the Springfield Hospital. One of the things that concerns me most is how much our community has changed. Today, we are separated. We have built walls around each other for one reason or another. I truly believe that it takes a community of loving, caring people to help each other out, to be more neighborly, something that we're not doing anymore. We, on February 22nd at 6 p.m. at the Bellows Falls Opera House, are putting on a forum addressing the drug, opioid, and heroin addiction and overdoses that have affected our community in a very terrible, dramatic way. All of us, together, can save lives and make a difference and get our community back to where it was when I was a child. Thank you. You are doing
That's it, folks. Be sure to catch us every Wednesdays at 7:30 a.m. Also, find us on Facebook at Fact TV or tell us what you think. thefeed8@gmail.com. And don't forget to watch the feed online at www.fact8.com.